to comprehend our moment in history right now, we must recognize that our drive for a new economy is not new. We're fighting the same battles that have been fought for centuries. And those battles have been for human dignity, freedom, inclusion, and justice. For thousands of years, the few have worked to seize the benefit of others' lives and labors for themselves, and they've used every weapon to persuade us to accept that we should be divided. Men from women, white from black, young from old, gay from straight, rich from poor, and on and on and on. And they've done this because they know that if we embrace those divisions, if we allow them to sink into the core of our being, then we will be weakened and eventually conquered. But today, we stand in continuity with the collective courage of our predecessors, who, as Jessica Gordon-Nembhard has written, invented new structures for work and cooperation in order to survive the brutal exclusions of race, of ethnicity, and of class. But the challenges we face today are different because of their sheer size and scope. Now, we are all familiar with the litany of decline and destruction that we've witnessed in the last 30 years as jobs have disappeared and inequality has skyrocketed and our prisons have been swollen and our mountains have been blown to pieces. And for too long we have been paralyzed by the incantation repeated from the commanding heights that there is nothing we can do, nothing that we should do, because the unregulated free market will make everything all right. The rising tide will lift all boats. But now we see the truth, which is that for our communities and our planet, the rising tide of capitalism, the rising seas of climate change are really only lifting the yachts, leaving most of the rest of us to flounder and to drown. We are beginning to hear prominent voices from those commanding heights proclaim publicly that inequality is undermining our democracy. The President of the United States has now said this. The New York Times has now said this. And even Pope Francis has now boldly and bluntly declared that, quote, inequality is the root of all social evil. And then along came a French economist to drive a stake through the heart of the idea that the unregulated free market will always make everything better for everyone. We are gathered here today because we hold in our hands the potential for tremendous new power. If we can figure out, as Ed Whitfield said, how we can think and act together. Now, if you look across the nation at the networks that are rising up, you will perceive tremendous creativity exploding across the continent and across the world. We see our ingenuity and our strength in the incredible proliferation of ideas about how to create jobs and how to break down walls and how to reintroduce democracy into all the institutions of our lives. And we see our ingenuity and our strength in the incredible proliferation of names for the future that we wish to embrace. We talk about a just economy, a sustainable economy, a green economy, a solidarity, social, generative, sharing, caring, collaborative, circular economy, and so many other names. And each of these names carries with it an analysis and a set of values and an agenda and a league of supporters growing by the day. But we must acknowledge that the very creativity that can save us also has the potential to divide and destroy us, because each of these terms adds to the centrifugal force that could spin us away from each other. We must not make the mistake of withholding our support from others until they demonstrate that they accept our way of describing things, our particular language, our particular values, our particular strategy. There's a constant human illusion that if only we could just figure it out, find the exact right words, if only we could agree on the exact right first principles, then our task would be easy. But such exactitude is impossible because human beings come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different generations, and thus they will always express their values and their priorities in somewhat different ways, and that is a good thing. If we insist on strict agreement, then ironically, we end up mimicking the dominant ideology of competition by spending our precious time, our valuable energy, squabbling about why our vision is better than someone else's. The only way that we are going to succeed at building the strength necessary to transform the economy of the United States and Canada and other modern industrial nations, and the only way that we are going to design the systems of the future is if we come to understand in the depth of our souls, as Gopal Dayaneni has said, difference does not mean division. Diversity does not mean division. Diversity is life. And if we can figure it out today and in the future, diversity is power. Now, to succeed in the new economy movement, we need to cultivate and to support allies who are working on all the different pieces of the puzzle at the same time. And the incredible thing is that's already happening. The New Economy Coalition is now up to 120 organizations working on business, climate, food, energy, consumption, inclusion, democracy, finance, race, economics, labor, education, ownership, control, public policy, local communities, and the rescue and reform of democracy. We are already connected to millions of people. And when you think of the combined intellect and resources and opportunities represented in that connectivity, you can begin to see the outline of real transformative power. The forces of the status quo may be strong, but the truth is, we have them surrounded. We have two little problems. They don't know it yet, and we don't know it yet. But we are common bound. Bound together by a common dream, bound together by a common destiny. And the question that we are asking today, openly, boldly, urgently, is whether we here truly have the commitment to move together towards a new economy. To do so, we must reconceive of ourselves not as a mishmash of groups working on isolated projects, but as a vast and diverse force for transformation operating at the center of our moment in history. I want to repeat that, a vast and diverse force for transformation operating at the center of our moment in history. That is the definition of a movement. But we must be able to move from a culture of competition for resources, attention, moral superiority, to a culture of mutual generosity, where we are always and primarily looking for ways to support each other. We have to move from a culture of scarcity, where there's never enough money or time or people or political power, to a culture of abundance, in which we know that we are powerful because we have each other. Now think about this. Think of what we could do if we truly acted together. If ASBC, Amoeba, Bally, Peers, B-Lab, CoFed, the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops, the Association of Enterprise Opportunity, Equal Exchange, Patagonia, Capital Institute, and so many others work together to advance and support local and sustainable businesses and new forms of finance, consumption, ownership, and control. Think of what we could do if the Freelancers Union and Green for All and National People's Action, CoFed, the Labor Network for Sustainability, Fund for Democratic Communities, and all the cooperative enterprises in Canada through our ally SEDNet, and the other allies in the labor unions at Restaurant Opportunity Center, National Domestic Workers Alliance, Jobs with Justice. Imagine if we all came together truly to defend the rights and to set new standards and new wages for the future of work on this continent. Think of what we could do if we could support Shareable and the Democracy Collaborative and Demos, EcoTrust, TELUS, Scorai, PolicyLink, the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, the New Economics Foundation, the Sustainable Economies Law Center, and all the others who are laying out new laws and policies which our elected officials need to pass to empower and create the new economy. Think of what we could do if the funders and philanthropists who so generously have made possible much of our work, if we were able to work with them to define new forms of collaborative and democratic funding so that we spent less time competing and more time cooperating for change. I think you're getting the feel for this. Think of what we could do if congregations and spiritual communities, united across denominations and faiths, could raise their prophetic voices and hold our economy accountable to our highest and most sacred human values. If churches, synagogues, temples, and mosques recognize their power as local anchor institutions and as grassroots investors in their communities. If seminaries and divinity schools turned out organizers for environmental and social justice. And if we could join in support of faith-based organizers like Interfaith Worker Justice, PICO, and the Gamaliel Foundation, so that together we could work to create the next great social movement in the United States. Think of what we could do if we step forward in unison to support the just transition necessary to protect our communities from the dual scourge of unemployment and climate change. And if we were to ask all the members of all our organizations to go to New York City this September in partnership with the Responsible Endowments Coalition, 350, Conservation Law Foundation, Friends of the Earth, Green America, Climate Justice, and all the hundreds of thousands of people who need to show the United Nations that we are not willing to sacrifice our planet to their procrastination and their pandering. I got two more for you. Think of what we could do if we could expand New Economy Week in October into an international celebration dedicated to creating the world we want. And if we could work with the brave sponsors of Moral Monday and Truthful Tuesday and expand this into an entire year in which we bring our values to life. Justice January, Fairness February, Movement March, Activist April, all the way around to Democratic December. If you pay attention to our own history, what we learn is that we are supposed to be an ever-expanding experiment in justice, prosperity, and freedom for everyone. And now, this is the really mind-blowing one, if you ask me. Think of what we could do if we were to intensify our support for the courageous work already taking place in cities like Boston, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Detroit, Greensboro, Ithaca, Jackson, Oakland, Portland, Richmond, Toronto, Vancouver, and all across the continent. Or if we supported the movements that have already emerged in Arizona, Kentucky, Massachusetts, Missouri, Mississippi, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Vermont, and Wisconsin. That's starting to sound like a real movement to me. In all of these places, the new economy is already being born. We know that we have been brought together by a dream that we would transform the power on which we live. We want a world in which our people are happier, our cities more vibrant, our jobs more satisfying, where democracy is not something practiced by the few on election day, but part of our educations, our jobs, and all walks of life. We want to live in a world where the beauty of the land we inherited will be here not just in 100 years, but in 100 centuries. We want a world in which we reject the idea that some people are trash, that some people must be ignored, or left behind, or thrown aside, or sacrificed because we simply cannot afford to bring them along. We want a world of genuine freedom, though we often forget to use the word, freedom to live a life of dignity and joy. And so, in conclusion, here we are, CommonBound, moving together toward a new economy. What brings us together and what binds us tightly is the dream. For we believe that every child, in every classroom, and every woman seeking equality and respect, and every man hoping for a better future, and every worker looking out from the kitchen or up from the factory floor, every parent praying that their sons and daughters will be safe through the day, every creative person tackling a new challenge or starting a new business, every immigrant settling in a new country, every strong person exulting in their good fortune, every broken person seeking healing, every young person dreaming of the future, every old person savoring the past. We believe that every person of every class and every in every country deserves to live a free and full and flourishing life. We are bound together by the dream, and we are being carried forward by the great tide of history. So I want you to join me now in claiming the core reason why we are at CommonBound. It is because we believe in democracy for everybody. We believe in dignity for... You think they're going to hear you on Wall Street if that's as loud as you can get? Come on. We believe in inclusion for... Okay, we believe in prosperity for... We believe in justice for... Okay, we can be bound together, bound for change, bound for history, if we learn to trust each other, support each other down the long, hard road to success. So my question for you today, tomorrow, and beyond is, are you truly ready to come together in unity and diversity to fulfill that dream? Then that is what we now must do. Thank you.